Hello.
Hello.
I see you falling asleep over there. You can't fall asleep. We're doing a podcast.
I know.
Are you ready
for the starting?
Are you ready for the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I thought my face was too washed out. You couldn't see me closing my eyes.
I can still see you.
Oh.
All right. Hello and welcome to Learning the Law, a podcast about all things legal with a focus on current events where we try to teach you things in 1 hour. My name is Ashley, aka Phoenix Nymphy, and my co-host, the tired, who is the man of the hour, my husband, Ron. This podcast is purely educational and should not be taken as legal advice. This podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. This podcast is based on our interpretation of relevant law, more like his interpretation because he's the lawyer here. Any opinions expressed are the opinions of the individual making them and do not reflect the opinions of any firm, company, or other individuals. Ron is a licensed practicing attorney in the state of California.
Yes, I am.
So...
And have been since September of 1999.
Yes. Now that we've got that out of the way, the podcast looks weird this week. I am aware. He is on bed rest right now. He kind of can't come out of the bedroom. So he's in the bedroom while I am at the desktop, the actual streaming rig. I tried to hook him up with a better webcam, but his computer wasn't registering it. So sorry, you get my face and HD, and you get his face with whatever that laptop is.
It's an Asus Republic of Gamer laptop, and it is awesome except for the webcam.
So we had to cancel last week due to medical reasons, and we pushed yesterday's podcast to today due to medical reasons.
Sorry, everyone.
We got a lot going on here in our lives. Ron has a foot ulcer that he's trying to deal with, and I'm on my period and it sucks this month. So that's why we pushed it back. I slept all day yesterday. It was not a good day for me. It was a really bad day for me. So yeah, it's been a couple weeks since we have had a podcast. I finally got episode 7 up today, so it's available for everyone, even though it is slightly late because they did actually end up extending the moratoriums, but only for 2 more months.
Right.
So the last episode is still. I still recommend listening to that episode because you need to know what you got to do when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and 2 months doesn't give you a lot of time to prepare if you haven't prepared already.
Yeah, so get yourself prepared. Just be prepared, just in case. You never know. So.
Yes. It's been an interesting couple of weeks.
The topic of the week this week. So this week's podcast, we're going to focus on class action lawsuits. And we're also going to talk about Representative Swalwell and the lawsuit he has going on. Now, I remember when we were talking about the federal felony charges and all that stuff, and
yep.
Trump, and you were like, the only way anything's going to happen is if like one of the representatives does something. So that's why I wanted to address this, because I was like, there's actually a representative trying to do something. So Representative Eric Swalwell, who was one of the managing representatives during the impeachment trial, has filed a lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump,
Donald Trump
his
Jr.
son, Trump Jr., Mo Brooks, another representative from Alabama, accusing them of inciting the storm inciting the riots
Right, the
at the
storming of the
Capitol.
Capitol.
Yeah. So I want to know, because we learned about the Westfall Act. Is that viable? Is that gonna go anywhere?
Well, if you look at the complaint that was filed in the lawsuit, he is trying to, in addition to Trump Jr. and Giuliani, who have no official government position, he is trying to sue Donald Trump and Mo Brooks in an individual capacity, and states that quite clearly in his lawsuit. Problem being, he's going to have to prove that.
Right. Well,
And
in Mitch McConnell's own words were, without a doubt, this is true, but he didn't have the vagina to back up his words and still found him not guilty.
Right. Now, the problem is Donald Trump at the time was president 24/7. There isn't a time when the president is not the president. He was addressing a gathering. He was addressing a group. It was a rally. How can you differentiate saying that this rally, he was an individual, when the other 400 rallies he's had in the past 4 years, he was the president?
So that's how he's trying to go around the Westfall Act, but he's not going to. Okay.
Right. He's not going to be able to do it.
See, and this is why the Westfall Act should not exist, because he should be able to sue them for. Wow, man.
Yeah,
See, that's
I totally agree. The same with Representative Brooks.
right.
But it will continue against Trump and Giuliani. Trump Jr.
Yeah. It's a shame that because his words clearly, they were able to proved during the impeachment trial that he clearly had something to do, and he clearly incited that riot.
Right. But
and he's going to get away with it.
Also, remember, impeachments are political trials, not legal ones.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. Because if you take that same information to a regular court system, the evidence doesn't change.
No, but the procedure and the law does.
Right. So what frustrates me is the only way to have gotten anything from him is the impeachment trial. And it failed utterly because Republicans put party before country.
Correct.
And I realize that we shouldn't be all Republicans, blah, 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 but it's the truth. It's the truth. What we saw happen is exactly like every single Republican, after fighting against the bill that was passed, the most recent COVID-19 package, the Democrats reached across the aisle, said, okay, all right, what can we do to compromise and help and get this passed? Did what they asked for, and they still didn't sign off on it.
Right.
Every single one of them didn't sign off on it. What's the point?
There is no point. And unfortunately, the Democrats are not going to learn that there is no bipartisanship anymore.
They don't want to
There,
actually help us. They
there
don't
is just
care.
pure power. And the Democrats do not wield power well.
It's frustrating. It is so utterly frustrating and so defeated. I just feel defeated because these are people who are stop voting for Republicans because they don't give a crap about you. They don't care. There is no Republican that is currently in office who gives a crap. Also, turn your phone off. I just heard it go off.
Oh no, that's my notification that I got a work email.
Oh, well,
I don't know how to turn it off.
You're working for me now. So you are off the clock for that. So because of the Westfall Act, it's probably not going to do anything against Trump and Representative Brooks, but it will do some damage to Giuliani and Trump Jr.
Right. And you'll hear some things come out in the trial, the civil trial, that would not have come out in the impeachment trial because they're two different things.
What do you think will come out in the civil trial?
Oh, it all depends how they're going to depose Giuliani and Trump Jr. I mean, they get to ask him just about anything. Whether or not we'll get to know.
What do you mean by depose?
Okay. In a civil trial, you can do it in a criminal trial too, but there's usually not a point. There's a thing called a deposition. And a deposition is basically a question and answer period outside of the courtroom, which is attended by the parties and their counsel. You got a court reporter, and they testify under oath as to the questions that are presented to them.
So it's kind of like a pre-trial.
Yeah. It's part of what's called discovery.
Oh.
And in a civil trial, there's things like interrogatories, which are written questions that they have to respond to. There are requests for admissions, which they either have to admit that they did something or deny it. There are requests for documents that they have to produce if they have them. So a lot of stuff can come from this. And they're allowed to ask anything that can relate to evidence that can be brought at trial. So at this stage, they don't necessarily have to be relevant to the charges. It just has to be relevant to discovering something about the charges. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
are they necessarily the same kind of questions you'll ask in trial?
No, once you get to the trial stage, you know what you're going to ask.
Oh, okay. So you're just asking a bunch of questions just to figure out how you're going to go about, I guess.
Right. You've heard the saying that a good lawyer doesn't ask a question that he doesn't already know an answer to.
Right.
That's at trial. They know what the answer is at the trial stage. At this stage, that's what they're going to find out. That's how they know how you're going to answer a trial, is through the deposition and discovery process. And if you lie at this stage, then they can bring out perjury charges at trial. And it makes you look really bad if all of a sudden you change your story.
Oh, okay.
So I would expect them to go with some questions for white supremacy, that kind of tactic.
Okay. Do you know anything else about what's going on with that trial, or is it just one of those things that it's going to take some time?
It's going to take a long time. It could go on for years.
Most cases do, don't they? Like,
civil actions, if it's not like a class action, not a class action, sorry, a small claims action.
Yeah.
They go on for a year or two. I'm in the middle of some cases right now, and these are just personal injury automobile accidents, 5 years old.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it's awesome. It's awesome, but at the same time, it kind of sucks because obviously Trump is gonna get away like he always does. He's never going to. That's okay. God will handle him later.
Right. And and
he's gonna die someday.
If he got reelected in 2024, he could then pardon Trump Jr. and Giuliani and pretty much put a whole nix on the lawsuit.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen. I really hope. I don't know. No. I have more faith in our country to not vote for him again. Should I? We'll see.
I'm not going to crush your faith.
Please don't crush my faith. I feel like we have a lot more, intelligent, well-informed people than that. Like, okay, you saw this happen. Like, you still going to vote for him?
And I generally agree with you. And then I remember some of the people I went to high school with.
Okay, moving on. So, likely. So in your thing, you said likelihood to survive dismissal.
Right, and that's when they're going to move for a motion to dismiss the charges against Trump and Representative Brooks based on the Westfall Act. And that will be a motion that will come probably sooner than later.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about for that particular case?
No, that's the nuts and bolts of it.
All right, well, let's go to... So now we're going to talk about what we really wanted to get into today, which was class actions. What is a class action lawsuit?
Okay. A class action is a lawsuit that is brought with a tremendous number of plaintiffs who all have the same kind of damage. For example, I had a Chevy pickup truck that had side saddle gas tanks. They tended to explode in a side automobile crash if you got T-boned.
Yikes.
Okay. So a class action lawsuit was brought by anyone who owned one of these cars. Now, not everybody had the same damages because some people actually did, get blown up. But for the most part, tens of thousands of people had these cars. Now, the fix on it was like a $500 fire armor plate thing that they could put next to the gas tank. But the reason you do a class action is it is very inefficient for the courts to go through tens of thousands of lawsuits for $500 in damages when people bringing the lawsuit are going to have to pay their attorneys $400 or $500 an hour.
Okay. So then why would you do a class action?
So what the class action does is it takes whoever has one of these products, and instead of 10,000 lawsuits, you have one lawsuit.
So like the PG&E, I mean, there are so many famous class action lawsuits. I mean, Aaron Brockovich is literally about a class action lawsuit,
Yeah, that's a good example.
Against PG&E. Like, I mean, it is a classic, and she's still actually doing that. And has done that, and has worked with many class action lawsuits and gotten people, my aunt, who she had breast cancer, had a double mastectomy, got implants. The implants leaked, ended up triggering lupus, and was in a class action because of the leakage, and ended up winning. But that took years for that to settle and be done.
Right.
I didn't even know that was the thing she was doing until it happened, because when it started, I was too young to understand. And when it finished, I was college age. That's how long class action lawsuits can last.
That's how long a lot of regular lawsuits can last as well.
Like, I mean, I grew up, knew nothing about it until the end. But so what is the point of class action lawsuits? And like, do you get a lot of money in class action lawsuits?
Well, let's get to the process first.
Okay. Well, first, I actually like the question, why are they necessary? Like, what's the point of a class action?
Because a lot of people who get injured or have damages cannot afford to file a lawsuit against, say, Chevrolet or GlaxoSmithKline, which is a pharmaceutical company. If
I think it also holds these companies accountable and forces them to make changes. I mean,
right. And you'll see there's a lot of legislation to cut down on class actions.
Really?
Yes.
Because I'm curious, like, how often do you get justice from a class action?
It depends on your definition of justice. I'll go back to the Chevrolet truck scenario. In the end, everybody who owned one of these trucks got a coupon for a $1,000 rebate on their next purchase of a Chevy truck. And they got to have them take it to the dealer and put in that plate.
Okay. That's not bad.
Is that justice?
Well, they got their stuff fixed without having to pay for it.
Right. Did they get, and they got a $1,000 rebate. Now, the people that died in the crash,
people who die in a car, you're never really going to get true justice, though, when a death occurs. whether it's
Right.
a murder or anything. Because, I mean, even if you do catch the murderer and you put them behind bars or whatever, it doesn't bring them back.
Right. And just because there's a lot of people who have this car, is the class action is not an automatic thing. It has to be certified. A judge takes a look at it and says, okay, all these people had the same damages. All these people suffered the same. They can be part of the class. Now, you may have lead plaintiffs that have additional damages, such as, I exploded in my truck.
Right.
The lead plaintiffs can get damages different than the class. The class being everybody who owns the truck.
Right. Right.
But
Like, do
say that,
attorneys, so I'm curious, like when you say you have one person who wants to file a lawsuit against a company because we'll go with birth control. Birth control there have been so many class action lawsuits against various birth controls. Now, how does that start out? Like, say I'm coming to you, I'm like, I want to file a lawsuit against this birth control company, or this birth control because it caused polyps and cyst or whatever, and it is like the doctor showed that this is what it did and now I can't have kids, or there's a lot. I had a heart attack as well, like it really caused some serious damage, right?
right.
There is someone that I know who actually had a stroke because of her birth control, because that is, even though it's a side effect, like birth control is not as good as people think it is. So how does it start off? Because like, does it start with like one person going to an attorney and saying, I have this suit that I want to file. I want them to pay for my medical bills and blah, 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 because.
Right. We'll take that example. That would be a personal injury lawsuit.
Okay.
Okay. During what we previously discussed, the discovery process, the attorney discovers that, hey, there's a lot of people with this particular problem.
How did they
Same as
find that kind
my
of
client.
information out, though?
That's when you ask for in discovery, like the request for production of documents. You ask for all the research and development testing documents that they used during the trials of this particular drug.
I remember seeing, when they were filing the big, the class actions against like asbestos or whatever, you might be
Oh, yeah.
entitled to compensation. Is that also,
Mesothelioma. I did
yeah.
those.
Oh, is that a legit, like, is that also a thing? Like if an attorney goes, this could be a class action. Is that another way to, like, how do you determine that it's going to be a class action, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
That it all takes place in the discovery process. When you find out a lot of people have been injured the same as your client, that's when you ask a judge for certification of a class.
Okay.
And when I
So,
say a class, I mean the group of people who have been injured.
yeah, that's, so I still don't understand how that's going to come out in discovery, though. Like, how is, say you're suing a birth control company because that's medical. Like, how do you how do you know? How do you find out in discovery if you don't reach out and ask? Like the public, how do you get that in discovery against the company? Like,
Well, in when you get those research and development documents, you have to go through them. You have to have an expert look at them, and he can say, "Look, they knew that it was defect. There was problems with the drug. They had a 12% defect during
interesting.
research and development."
Okay.
And then, um, as I'm sure you know, you'll see advertisements. Hey, do you have mesothelioma? Did you ever work with asbestos?
You could be
And
entitled to some compensation.
you could be. And that's how they build up the class.
Okay. So like say I have, a stroke and some awful medical things happen because of birth control. Um and I go to an attorney and I'm filing this suit and like there's no other like things that go it just stays at a personal injury thing at that point.
Yes.
Okay, so like interesting. So class actions only come out
Yeah.
after like the initial person is filing like a personal injury
Right.
suit.
Now, if your attorney is monitoring these kind of things and there's your lawsuit, and then all of a sudden there's a lawsuit in San Francisco and a lawsuit in Las Vegas, and then a lawsuit, in Michigan, you can connect those.
Is there how would do attorneys have like some kind of like scanner or something for their area that they practice where they
Oh,
learn that
class class action attorneys have their own network.
okay, so there is a network that will okay, so that they can interesting. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then those attorneys can get together and file a motion for certification for class action.
Now, what's in that process?
In that process, you have to gather all the plaintiffs' names from the individual lawsuits, and if they're from different states, you'll be going to federal court, and you bring a motion to have the cases removed from the state to the federal court and ask a judge to certify that as a class action.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, if a class is certified and approved to be a class action, then you have to notify every potential person of that class.
Oh, is that where the commercials and stuff come in?
The
Emails,
commercials,
commercials.
emails, commercials, for example, everybody who is a registered owner of that particular Chevy truck got a mail saying you could potentially be in a class action.
I've gotten quite a few emails in the past about that. One recently, actually, which is what brought this up. Epic Games. There's the class action against Epic Games because they're claiming that they violated. Oh my god, I should bring that up because I don't remember exactly what it was. Um, yeah. If you
Right.
played Fortnite or Rocket League between July 1st, 2015 and February 25th, 2021, and exchanged in-game virtual currency for any in-game item or purchased in-game virtual currency for use within the games, you may be eligible to receive cash compensation or in-game virtual currency from a class action settlement. It's Epic Loot Box Settlement. So it is it's coming out of North Carolina. They filed an action against the defendant alleging that Epic Games violated state consumer protection laws, prevented minors from exercising their contractual disaffirmation rights, and negligently misrepresented the value of its in-game items in connection with its Fortnite and Rocket League video games. So that's what made me go, hey, I want to learn more about class actions. Like,
Right. And
I'm an adult. I don't qualify for that because I when I was playing Fortnite, I chose to make those purchases. But it sounds like basically because loot boxes are gambling, children are illegally gambling kind of deal.
Right. It sounds like it's coming out of North Carolina. Do you know if it's the state of North Carolina or is it a federal district in North Carolina?
Waco County or something like that.
Waco County. That would be a state action.
Yeah, it looks like it's a state action.
Okay. So in a state class action, the other 49
Superior
states.
Court of Wake County, North Carolina.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a state class action.
Okay.
And so everybody in the state who is potentially a member of that class has to be notified.
Gotcha.
And the people that have that information would be Epic Games.
Okay.
So the people suing Epic Games would have to be able to get that list from Epic Games in order to notify people of their potential of being in the class. When you're given that notification, you do have the option to opt in or out of the class. So you can generally, if you don't do anything, you're going to be part of the class. If you opt out, that retains your right to sue Epic Games individually. Generally, not worth your time to do that.
So if you opt out, you can sue them individually?
Yes.
But
if you stay in the class, you are stuck with whatever settlement the class gets.
And a lot of times your settlement is like $10.
Right. I mean, how much is a loot box in Fortnite?
Right. I think we had a class action against there was like a class action one time. It was against one of the security, like FICO or something like. Do you remember that? Because we were like, it was something about a data breach or something like that. And
yes.
The option was you can get compensated for it, which was going to end up being like $25, or you can get like a year's worth of free monitoring. And we opted which was way more worth, because like that was worth more than $25.
Right. To us, because that monitoring one costs at least $100 a year.
Yeah.
But it also gave you this peace of mind. Now that
it's like monitoring for 3 years or something like that.
Yeah. Now that monitoring cost the company less than the $25 if they had given us cash.
Right, because I mean they're not trading anything with the monitoring. For us, it was more beneficial, but even for the company, it's more beneficial for us to opt for the free monitoring.
Right.
Because then they're not having to give money to anyone.
Right. But that cash comes from a lump sum settlement.
Right.
So you're given an option generally. And this, I'm going to just throw some figures at you. Say that lump sum is $20 million. You have 1 million people as part of this class. So that would be $20 a piece. Or they get the monitoring for 3 years. Most of the people are going to take the monitoring. Now, the attorneys who brought the class action are generally going to get around 30% or so of the money in the settlement.
Holy crap, that's so much money.
So of that 20 million, attorneys are going to take 6 or 7 million out of that.
Wow. Class action attorneys make bank, huh?
Oh, they can. I didn't because I was an associate, but the partners did. The partners made enough that they retired.
Whoa.
And closed the firm. But that's a different story.
So
if this 13 million that's left, right? If everybody in the class wanted money, they'd get $13, not even the 25.
Right.
So who really profits from a class action? The ones that get rich are the attorneys.
So then is it worth doing a class action though?
If you're the lead plaintiff, like I said, you can get additional damages. But if you're just someone who played Fortnite, bought a couple of loot boxes, didn't get what you want, is it wrong for you to only get $10?
Right. Well, I mean, my question, so the thing, let me try to put it into words. So when it comes to like law stuff, like a lot of people look at it as getting money. But for me, when I see stuff like this, it's like, no, you're trying to hold people accountable. When you sue someone, you're trying to hold them accountable for what they've done. Like when you take them to small claims court and, you have a roommate who's not paying you, their rent and they've destroyed the house and everything and you're responsible for it. Yes, you're asking for money, but at the same time, you're trying to hold them accountable for their actions, right? So when it comes to class action lawsuits, at least from where I sit, they seem to be the thing that holds these massive companies accountable for producing, like Yaz, the birth control was removed because of a class action lawsuit. Vioxx, a pain medication, which I used to take because my periods were so bad and my cramps are so bad, was removed due to a class action because of heart issues, because it caused heart problems. So,
right. Another example is Paxil.
Yeah.
They had to change the marketing because originally they said, "Oh, this is non-addictive."
But because
no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was very addictive.
Because
Most antidepressants.
It was in a different, but it was like Lexapro and all that stuff are not made the same way as Paxil is. It's not made the same way, so it's not addictive. But like the opioid crisis and stuff like that. I mean, there are lawsuits that are still going on with that kind of stuff, and it needs like
Those
My aunt,
lawsuits will go on for a long, long time.
well, the lawsuit, my aunt died because she essentially died because she was addicted to opioids, um, to pain medication because she was trying to hide her pain essentially, and she ended up bleeding out. And that's you they actually asked my cousin if she wanted to be a part of the lawsuit against the doctor. You remember this, against the
Yeah, I remember.
doctor that kept giving them to her because there was like, it was kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal that's happening in Georgia. There's a collective group of doctors in Atlanta that were just prescribing opioid medication and pain medication to people. And like there's a lawsuit, like they got, like it's kind of a big lawsuit. And they asked her if she wanted to be a part of it, and they were going to have to exhume my aunt and do an autopsy and do all of that stuff. And my cousin was like, I don't want to go through that. I don't,
Right.
that's a lot to have to go through. But she had that option because they're trying to hold these doctors accountable and put them in jail for murder. Because that's essentially what happened. She was murdered
By your doctor.
by her
Yeah.
doctor. So
What they will charge him with eventually would be criminal negligence.
right. But they are trying, I think the lawsuit's still going, but yeah, there's several people that are in on this. She was like five of his most recent victims. She was like the fifth of his most recent victims. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, yeah, of course, lawyers are going to make a lot of money when it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to class action.
Right.
But you tend to have a lot of people, a lot of attorneys on those class action lawsuits, do you not? Like, it's not like one attorney, it's a team of attorneys.
Right, because each attorney has their own client.
Right. So you can have like 10 to 20 attorneys on a class action lawsuit, which $3 million is not going to go very far with 20 people. You know what I mean? I mean, it's going to go.
Yeah. It's still that would still be 150,000 a piece.
Which is good, but it's not like getting paid $1 million. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like you say $3 million go to the attorneys, but because they suck you in when they give you like these big numbers, like this class action, they settled for $20 million. Okay, but what really happened? What was the disbursement of that actual money? Because people are motivated by that. They think they're going to win that, but but the reality is not that. And so like when it comes to that kind of stuff, for me, at least the way I like to look at it is you're holding, these drug companies and all of this stuff accountable for their actions and making them do different stuff, making making Toyota do better at making a car that's going to actually break, get better airbags that are actually going to deploy, or, all kinds, like, because most, yes, there's money, but I think the win is that safety, that peace of mind. So for me, that's why class actions matter.
Right. And you need to hold companies responsible for their actions and their products.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if the lawsuit against the doctor was an actual class action or if it just had a lot of plaintiffs.
I don't know that it was a class action. I think it just had several plaintiffs.
Because and we'll get into the difference now. There's class actions, and in order to be certified as a class action, generally everybody has to have the same kind of damages.
Okay.
Now, in this particular case with your aunt, it's probably a mass tort lawsuit because each victim of the doctor probably had their own damages.
Gotcha.
Different things, different ages, different life expectancy. They may not have died from it.
Right. Okay.
So the damages would vary greatly between different people. In that case, you cannot have a class action.
Oh, okay. So what is a mass tort?
A mass tort.
Yeah.
Um, I do have an example here. Say a drug company has a vaginal mesh. It's implanted in hundreds of thousands of women across the country. It was defectively designed. Litigation pursues. Each woman is injured by that implant differently. Serious physical and emotional suffering, weeks or months of lost wages. Everybody's going to have a very different amount of monetary damages because unfortunately that's the only way they can be compensated.
Right.
Now, in comparison, a class action is like you have the defective dishwasher or the defective truck. Not
Are
everybody
are
was.
drug most when it comes to like drug companies and stuff like that, are they mostly mass torts because of the fact that people have so many, because your body, like you have such a different, like when you're in a car accident, the car accident stuff and the response to, like, say the fuel, in the Chevy truck, that's going to be the same. Your personal damages, you might not necessarily get quite as hurt or vice versa, but the truck damage is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So,
And
but
the
when it
cost to
comes
fix is going to be the same.
right, but when it comes to the drug companies, when it comes to drugs in general, they affect us all differently. Like metformin works for me for my PCOS, but I know people that it does not work for because just how our bodies work. So is when it comes to drugs, are those usually mass torts or can you do a class action?
You can do a class action. Now the people, and I'll use Paxil
Example?
as an example. That was a mass tort class action lawsuit.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It was a class action for those who couldn't really prove their damages, but had taken the product.
Okay.
So that was one class. Then you had the people who were actually damaged by it.
Oh.
That was a separate portion of that particular lawsuit. And so when it settled and there was this multi-million-dollar slush fund, basically, there were different levels of what you could recover.
Okay. Man, that is, I'm glad I don't do that because that's a lot of organization and that's a lot of work for whatever attorneys are working on that.
Yeah. Another example is all these mesothelioma cases. That came out of a San Francisco class action. But it's mass tort in the sense that everybody who has died from mesothelioma has different damages. So they get a different amount of money from the slush fund, which was set up by all the asbestos companies.
Wow.
And so
they can be separate and they can be the same.
Yeah.
Wow. That's kind of complicated.
It gets to be. And when it comes to the mesothelioma cases, there's still litigation going on.
Really?
30 years after everyone discovering, asbestos is bad. And it's not really saying, oh, we don't owe anything. The slush fund is already there. But the litigation is all the asbestos companies pointing fingers at the other asbestos company.
Oh. Nobody wants to take blame.
Right.
What is a slush fund?
A slush fund is basically, well, I'll just use the mesothelioma as an example. Everybody knows it's bad. The culmination of the litigation has basically said, all you companies need to put in money into this $100 million settlement. And that's just a figure. I forget exactly how big the slush fund is. Say it's $100 million. So someone dies from mesothelioma, they're entitled to, say, $100,000. And so the different asbestos companies will say, you need to pay $40,000 of that. That comes out of your portion of the slush fund, not my portion. And the other one says, no, you need to pay $40,000. I only need to pay $5,000 because you never proved it was my asbestos. It was your asbestos.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. Like, you killed people. Why does it matter? Just pay their families for your crap.
I had to ask dying people if they recalled the color of the bag that they used to mix the asbestos. Did it have a red stripe or a blue stripe?
What? Who is going to remember that kind of stuff?
And I will you not, these poor people generally got their asbestos contact at a naval shipyard during their time in the military.
That's terrible.
The guy said to me, this was like one of my first depositions. He said, "Are you shitting me? This was 40 years ago."
Right. How are they? Wow.
Yeah.
That is insane. That is insane. Yeah. So.
And the difference was one company's brown bag of asbestos had a red stripe on it. The other one had a blue stripe on it.
So why does it matter, though, if they've put all this money in the slush fund? Why does it even matter?
Because everybody's share of the slush fund is different.
Right. But if the companies are putting the money in, why does it matter which company it's coming from? It's coming from all of you.
Because the money just isn't sitting there in the bank.
Okay, so then how many companies are there? Each of you pay a portion of it. Like, that seems pretty straightforward to me. It's pretty simple to me.
Well, say one asbestos company produced 90% of the asbestos. whereas the other 10 produced anywhere between 1 or 2%, or I don't know if that math works, but there you go.
Okay, then that's how you break up the money.
That's how
you're the one
you
that produced the most, then you put in 90%.
That's how you would think it would work. However, when it comes to liability, you still get to defend yourself.
Oh my God. That's insane. So anyway, we're getting towards the end of the hour. So that was, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to how class actions work and like the point of class actions and like anything? Like is it worth going if you feel that you could be compensated for something? Is it worth going to an attorney and having a consultation?
Yes. Most will give you a free consultation. A free consultation is always worth it.
If they don't give you a free consultation, find a different attorney.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if you get a thing in the mail that says you could be a part of a class, look into it. You may get something out of it.
Yeah.
I got free buffalo shrimp at Hooters.
Heck yeah. They got good shrimp at Hooters. Hooters actually has really good food.
And I forget the reason why, but I remember getting the postcard in the mail saying I could be a potential. So I opted into the class. And about a year and a half later, I got a coupon in the mail for a free serving, a free order of buffalo shrimp. Well, there we go.
Amazing. So there you have it.
I got a free lunch. I don't know why, but I opted into the class.
Opting into class actions are sometimes worth it. Yeah, definitely look into it if you get those emails.
Yeah, but if you suffer physical or emotional damage, consult an attorney.
Right.
It may not be a class action. Maybe it shouldn't be a class action, but you need to look into compensation for your damages.
And we're going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening to Learning the Law. If you like this podcast and you want to hear more, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share in all your favorite places. You can find it hosted here live on Twitch at twitch.tv/PhoenixNymphy. Use the hashtag Learning the Law on TikTok and all social medias to follow more there. You can find Ron on Twitter at NecroKijo and me on most social media platforms at PhoenixNymphy. If you have any questions, please, we love questions. Ask us your questions. Tweet, comment, or email us at twolazydogsmedia@gmail.com. This has been a Two Lazy Dogs production.
Bye, everyone.